Hey guys, I hope you're doing well today. Um, Yesterday I did a sermon called Let's Talk About Christianity, where I went over some of the basics of the Christian faith because I realized that sometimes we say things in church without explaining the stuff and without explaining anything. And we in the church sometimes do that for new believers, but sometimes we all need a refresher course. So, and I realized as I was watching yesterday's video that it was kind of confusing, so I'm going to slow down and talk about some of the tenets of the faith. First, today's video, I'm just going to talk about the Bible. Um, so the Bible is, first of all, I should say, the first version of the Bible was put together in 1611. I think I've got my year right, 1611. And the first English version, should say, because um, the Bible is in the original scriptures, which is basically the biblical text, were in two language, were in like two basic languages. Um, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, and the Testament was written in Greek and Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke. Um, as I said, it was written in 1611, but it was, I should say, it was canonized in 1611. It was written before that because obviously Jesus, it was written while uh, while things were going on, but it was canonized in 1611. That's the first canonized English version of the Bible. And the first version is called the King James Version. It's the version with all the these and thous and all of that stuff. That was first when um, it was it's called the King James Version. I think that was either the king at the time or who translated it. I'm not sure. I would have to look in my old Bible college textbooks again. Um, and as I said yesterday, the Bible is first made up of 66 books or 66 sections, but it's separated into two big sections. One section is the Old Testament, and the other section is the New Testament. The Old Testament is before Jesus, the New Testament is after Jesus. So, Old Testament is before Jesus, and New Testament is after Jesus. The Old Testament goes from Genesis to 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 Malachi, and and Malachi and Malachi to no, the Old Testament goes from Genesis to Malachi, and the New Testament goes from Acts to Revelation. And as I said um, in yesterday's video, the 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 Bible is split up into 66 books. Um, but the books are really different sections. They're not actual books like you read a book. They're not actual books. We call them books, but they're not. They're ac- actual sections that they split the Bible into, and each section has a title. Like Genesis is a section. It talks about the beginning because Genesis means beginning. Exodus is the second book. Leviticus is the third book. Numbers is the fourth book. And Deuteronomy is the fifth book. So, and each book talks about a section, no, talks about a period in history where 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 that writer is writing. And as I said, um, some writers only wrote one book. Moses wrote 5 books, which I said the first 5 books of the Bible were written by Moses. And um, but each book is broken down into chapters, and each chapter is broken down into verses. And so there are the testaments are broken down into books. Books are broken down into chapters. Chapters are broken down into verses. And when you read the Bible and when you hear it spoken, you might, um, your pastor will say, go to John chapter 4, verses 1 to 11. So you would go to the book, to the section labeled John, chapter 4. You would go to the chapter 4, verses 1 to 11. That's just for readability. That's just to make it readable for people. Um, really, really though, the Bible wasn't written that way. It was written in and then translated. Um, and the when it was canonized, they during canonization, which is basically the putting together of the Bible, they decided for readability purposes to to break it down into chapters and verses. And as I said before, the Old Testament is translated from Hebrew, and the New Testament is translated uh, from uh, Greek. And why read the Bible? Because when you find the right version of the Bible that that is right for you and you can understand, and you would say, why does the Bible have so many versions? I would there are different opinions on this, but I would say um, because people have different understandings, people have different things that they respond to. So every version is pretty much the same, um, but they might have a little bit of different wording and different understanding. Some versions go deeper, some versions are lighter, depending on what um, what who you are. You may uh, you may like a deeper version or a lighter version, depending on who you are. And there are all kinds of study Bibles and stuff like that. Um, but but the wonderful thing about reading the Bible is everybody can find something that they can relate to. Like I said yesterday, um, when you start reading the Bible, you start reading it, but it begins to read read you, no matter who you are. When I say it begins to read you, there is something in there, no matter who you are, no matter what background you are, that will speak to you, and the Bible will come alive to you, and you will understand what's happening to you, and you'll get what we call revelation, but what is really a deeper understanding of who you are from reading the Bible. Because, as I said yesterday, um, it says in John that the Bible is God breathed, which means it may have been written by men, but those men were inspired by God, either because they they heard God's voice and got an impression in their spirits, or they actually walked with Jesus, who I went over yesterday, came from God, um, to earth, um, just to die for the Adam and Eve problem, which I talked about yesterday. That's why the Bible is so important, because you don't only read it for uh, do's and don'ts and whatever. It is literally um, an instruction manual for life. I heard Pink say in one song, "No, no one's handing you a key or a book with all the rules." I love Pink, I really do, but I tend to disagree with that. The Bible is the key and a book with all not not really rules, but the way to live your life. That's what's so amazing about the Bible, because the creator of the world left this not only instruction manual, but guide for life. And there are principles upon principles in the Word of God. And if you follow those principles, your life will be not worry free, but it will be just a lot easier. So I would argue that the Bible is the key, a- and a book with all the rules. So, because it is just so interesting how these stories of real people that lived in a time that was is so distant from ours, but they went through the same thing. They went through fear. There were times of faith. They slept around. They did the same things that we do. And it's so awesome to see how God was with them, and God never changes. The Bible is just so rich. And I hope you enjoyed my talk. Thanks. Bye. Have a great day. Oh, and for those of you who want to know what my background is, I went to Tyndale Bible College. Um, uh, no, I went to Tyndale College. It was called Tyndale University College and Seminary, but now it's just called Tyndale University. They changed the name about 2 years ago. And then um, I went there for uh, 7 years, and we talked about all this stuff, but I forget some of it now. But that I hope you enjoyed all of that. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I don't know everything, I'm still learning, but I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks. Bye.